Okay.
Roy.
Right.
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 Roy.
I was going to come up with something.
Oh,
Witty pithy is my want.
you could talk about my graduated cylinder here.
You have a graduated cylinder.
What degree does it have?
It has the degree of AeroPress.
Oh.
Oh. What purpose?
Coffee.
What is the primary function of this graduated cylinder? Audible.
Coffee.
Audible cylinders.
Audible demonstration of cylinder.
Yes.
It is
It makes
cylindrical
coffee.
in shape.
Is it a type of French press type thing, or is it a different a different method?
It's the
Not
next.
exactly.
It's like an
It's
espresso, right?
It's sort of kind of in between an espresso and a normal drip coffee. But the idea is like, so an espresso machine just kind of pumps a whole ton of pressure through some really finely ground coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing kind of does the same,
But it's all manual.
but it's all, it kind of steeps inside of the cylinder for a bit. You can see this little puck of coffee here from
Oh,
when I
Audible
used
seeing
earlier.
it.
Audible seeing a
A puck of
half-inch
coffee.
thick puck of coffee.
Coffee puck. That's not going to confuse kids at all. I'm going to say it to my nephews and watch the looks on their faces.
An iced coffee puck.
Yeah.
You use it on the ice and play iced coffee.
You could probably, yeah.
To one who knows coffee, a coffee puck is not such a foreign concept, because that's what they call the little brick of espresso after it has been.
Yeah, because usually
Made.
it's like in a round sort of chamber.
Puck-like shape.
One might say, puck-like.
Mm.
Yes.
So, before hockey was a thing, what would a puck have been used for, do you suppose? Because they knew what to call a puck.
Or did they?
That's true.
Did they just
Was
mishear
the
somebody
term
yelling
puck
after they got hit in the
invented?
knee with it?
For whatever reason, I'm remembering that in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Puck was a mischievous...
Oh yeah, he was a mischievous imp guy from Midsummer's Night's Dream. Yeah, he turned one guy into a donkey. It was funny.
Was he disc-shaped?
No.
He was generally person-shaped, as I understand.
Curious.
Mischievous or evil sprite.
So it's either just
Now I want to see, like, the origin. Because,
audible Googling.
Yes.
Audible Googling of the etymology of the word puck.
Of unknown origin, that's a cop-out. An input device similar to a mouse that is dragged across a sensitive surface. Okay, so that's another name for Robin Goodfellow. Okay, sure. Old English, Celtic, and Germanic.
Was it just
Unclear which one it initially came from. But, like, what was the original meaning?
maybe it meant that kind
online
of
etymology.
flat disc shape?
Etymology is, like, one of my favorite obscure things because it gets right down to the meaning. It's as close to metaphysics as you can get in a dictionary. What is this word? What is the meaning of word?
Well, at a certain point, I think we're running a little bit into a dead end
Oh,
here.
puck is possibly to hit or strike from the 1860s, perhaps related to poke. So that makes sense if, like, it came to be called puck, and hockey is the thing you push around and poke with a stick.
Right. And then the shape of the object later got applied to
Coffee
things
grounds.
other things that look like it.
Yeah.
Well, there you
So-
go.
Because the espresso machine wasn't a thing until like the 70s, I think. So
So you learn
Yeah.
something new every day. You can
The
learn
more
things just
you
from the words
know.
you use. Yeah. The more you know,
You know?
you know.
You know.
Um,
It's been nice weather out
it
there.
has been nice weather.
It was a
was-
little windy this morning, but
I mean, people in other parts of the country may or may not know the temperatures. There are no two winters alike in North Dakota or this general region, because last week we had, it was, I believe the coldest it got was about 30 below, and it was 42 above zero yesterday for a high, and now it's 15. So it's a freaking roller coaster this time of year, which, I mean, 60 or 80 degree temperature swing in the course of a week, par for the course.
Yeah.
But I had to chuckle a little bit. I was listening to Catching Foxes. They were interviewing Matt Fradd, and he was complaining about how annoyed he was at Northerners making fun of Southerners for complaining about the cold. And I was just like, yep, unapologetically, yes.
Don't worry, they get to make fun of us for complaining about heat.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It all evens
Except
out.
they kind of don't, because we get plenty of heat.
Yeah, it gets hot here.
You know,
We've had
in the
100-degree
summer.
days in the summer.
We don't get like
Yeah.
Arizona. But
Not like as much as say Texas, but we get 190 degree, and the humidity too.
190 degrees.
No, 100 or 90 degree days. The humidity up here is what you know. It's what they say. It's the humidity that gets you, not the heat. You know. Because even if it's 80 degrees and humid, I'm just like ugh, sticky. But besides weather, what is happening in our lives lately, boys?
I'm just doing school stuff. I don't know. Not a lot interesting
Not much has
happens
changed since the
over
last
here.
time we recorded, because it has been a
It's
little
been a
less
week.
time. Well,
It's been slightly under a week.
we recorded on Monday,
Oh, sure.
but yeah, it's Saturday, so
But it's like
close enough.
it's still roughly a week, and we give each other like the whole weekly update anyway. So
That's
it's
true.
Like, I don't know.
Not a ton of new
I,
things.
I went to classes. I did a lab. It was good times.
Lent continues apace.
Does.
Do
I started the consecration to St. Joseph, and then there's a group that meets at the Newman Center every week. So that's been cool. So far, only guys, even though it's open to everyone. So
Well, I
I-
think consecrating
Let's,
to Saint Joseph is more attractive to men.
well, theoretically,
would
there are
have
women
to
who are
agree.
also doing it, but they haven't attended the meeting yet.
say
But I'm doing it.
Neat.
Not for that though. In case y'all were wondering. But how go things at Anemone?
Seminem.
We had the performance of our play.
Ooh,
But,
that's right.
Yeah, if you recall from last week, if you are a weekly listener,
Kudos to you.
that
Thank you.
kudos to you, thank you. One of our staff members, one of the spiritual directors, spent some time in the world of the works as a professor of theater at the University of Kentucky. So he wrote a play about Gerard Manley Hopkins, who was a priest poet in England in kind of the late 1800s.
What are some of the
the
works he's
contem-
known for? Because I know I've heard his name thrown around.
I remember I was at a bonfire with
the
Andrew once, and
Deutschland-
he was talking
what?
about.
The Deutschland, the Wreck of the Deutschland is probably his most famous poem,
Hmm.
but
So mostly a poet.
yes.
Gotcha.
So we had a little play about his life. I played the trumpet in it.
There you go.
What kind of a costume did you have to wear for to act as a trumpet?
Just like a big brass tube with a flare at the end.
I just wore like a gold morph suit
There
Have you
go.
seen like the
with like a cone on my head, spray painted glittery gold.
There you go. Like a traffic cone with like the square part cut off.
there's like
Or just like a cone of shame.
Yeah. I do not like the cone of shame.
I've seen like images like memes online of people who have taken pictures of them wearing like trombones on their heads
or
or like
tubas.
tubas on their head. That's
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
And just like the description is like secret boss tuba he drops.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny.
Classic. Neat. And then did the gladiatorial fights ever commence, or was that
No.
purely a topic of discussion?
Purely hypothetical.
Apart from the rector, not a lot of the rest of the formation staff were super enthused about the idea.
Really?
So,
Huh.
Dang.
yeah,
That's odd.
unfortunately we didn't go forward with it.
Oh.
That's unfortunate.
Because just think if that's how seminary formation worked, you'd only get the most combat proficient priests in the church.
And you would only get one priest.
Have you guys seen pictures of like the guy who's CEO for Water on Fire, the priest? That guy has arms the size of my head. It's nuts. Or not.
Father Steve Gruno.
Yeah.
I believe his
He's
name
like,
is.
dang.
in muscle mass, you're
He
referring to.
is the very strong priest by the looks of him. So, yeah, it's like, dang. That's Bishop Robert Barron is rather safe, it would appear. But we're not robbing barons or talking about Bishop Robert Barron. Robert Barron. We're the Palladian Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
And we're not actually talking about Bishop Robert Barron on
No.
the show today.
Nor are we talking about the robber barons.
No.
No.
What are we talking about, Nathan?
We're talking about Shovel Knight.
Oh.
This is a game that
Been more
initially
creative with that
released
segue, but-
in 2013 by an independent studio called Yacht Club Games. And it has been periodically updated for free up through like 2019 with like 3 new campaigns. So there's like 4 total stories in this game.
Because this was crowdfunded, right?
It was initially crowdfunded.
And that was
yeah.
partially why the
And-
DLC was staggered out.
Right. The stretch goals were getting the bosses as playable characters,
Gotcha.
but they kind of got a little too ambitious.
Ah.
So, Shovel Knight is the title character of the game. He exists in this medieval land sort of setting, and it's like a time of, adventurers and knights and treasure and stuff. And so him and his partner/girlfriend, Shield Knight, are some of the greatest adventurers around that you can think of,
Mm-hmm.
So, on one of their adventures, they go to the Tower of Fate, which inside is this like dark magical amulet that seals Shield Knight away, and Shovel Knight gets the big sad because my girlfriend, she dead. So he goes and retires to be a sad farmer boy until a couple years later, an evil enchantress takes over the Tower of Fate and assembles an order of knights called the Order of No Quarter, and are terrorizing
only
the land.
nickels.
Yes,
Farming, a man of your talents.
He was a farmer boy. I couldn't think of the rhyme to follow that up.
It's okay.
The Larmer boy.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway,
He was a charmer boy. There you go.
because of
He was a skater duck. Moving on.
moving on in the story, because there's evil in the land again, Shovel Knight comes out of retirement to fight the 8 evil knights and fight the enchantress and stop the evil. And it's
Old man shovel.
right. It's very inspired by games like Mega Man, where you have like the 8 bosses that all have different powers that work on each other, and it's this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first level, at the end of the first level, you meet a character named the Black Knight, who is like your rival / former friend, and he's like got all black armor that reflects yours, and he's got a shovel also.
Mm-hmm.
And you're
We're
like,
not so different, you and I.
right. Well, the difference is he's black.
The Chaos Emeralds.
I found you, faker. No. So so they meet up at the end of the first level, and he's like, "Hi, Black Knight, how you doing?" And he's like, "You're after the Enchantress?" And he's like, "Yeah." Well, he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't let you do that." And he's like, "Why? Are you part of her order?" And he's like, "No, I'm not. I just don't want you to hurt the Enchantress." And Shovel Knight's like, "Well, that's dumb. I'm gonna fight you."
Let's throw it down.
So you give him merely a scratch, and you move on to the next set of levels.
Turns out shovels aren't terribly sharp.
Right. I was making a Monty Python Black Knight reference.
Ah, there you go. But a flesh wound.
So, there's not a lot of story to the main gameplay, but intermittently, after a couple of levels, you'll have a little scene of Shovel Knight sleeping by a bonfire, and he'll have a little dream sequence. And in this it's a playable dream sequence, too, where you can run around back and forth and try and catch Shield Knight, who is falling from the sky. It's like a dream about him and his regret and loss trying to save Shield Knight, and it's this whole...
If you die in this dream sequence, do you wake up?
No.
If you fall asleep
yeah.
in the dream sequence, do you fall into another dream?
There is actually no health bar or anything. It's just like catch Shield Knight.
Ah, gotcha.
And over the course of the game, you have 3 of these little dream sequences in total after a couple of levels, and they keep adding more and more enemies in your way before you can catch Shield Knight, so it gets harder and harder, and it's a little more desperate and a little more kind of reflective of his internal feelings about saving her. It's this whole cool thing. So after you fight the 8 knights in the Order of No Quarter, you get to her tower, the Enchantress's Tower of Fate, and you meet up with Black Knight again. He's like, hey, I'm still not cool with you going to kill the Enchantress.
Pass.
The Enchantress shows up and is like, hi, Black Knight, you want to join my order? And he's like, no, I still don't want to join your order. And she's like, cool, well, I'm going to shoot you with magic so you become a more powerful version, and I'll wait at the top of the tower. So you fight a souped-up final form Black Knight as Shovel Knight, but you beat him, and he's like, so yeah, after you beat him, he's like, please don't hurt the Enchantress. You know who I'm trying to save, right? And Shovel Knight is like, yeah, I kind of get it. So you go up to the top of the tower after a boss rush and several levels and stuff, and you go up into the Enchantress's room, and Shovel Knight's like, hey, Shield Knight, I know it's you up there. Can we go home, please? And the Enchantress is like, I'm not Shield Knight. She's not here anymore. I'm. She's all
consumed.
Pretty much. So after you fight the first phase of so you fight the Enchantress, right? Mm-hmm. She's like the final boss thing. But after you beat her, the curse on Shield Knight lifts, and she starts to fall from the top of the tower. Oh. And so, Shovel Knight catches her, and is like, "Oh, you saved me, Shovel Knight. I knew you'd come." And he's like, "I lost faith. I had lost faith in you before, but now I'm back."
Nevermore.
But then the evil magic inside the amulet that was possessing her gets the final form and gets mad. And
harder.
Right. And so they team up, and you get to fight the final boss teamed up with Shield Knight, and it's really cool. So it's like, so that happens, and
this is a platformer, by the way.
This is a side-scrolling platformer. It's exactly my kind of game. Mm-hmm. But so you and her fight the final boss, and after you deal the final blow, the Enchantress ghost thing shoots a laser beam of magic at you, but Shield Knight's holding it back with her giant shield that she's named after. Mm-hmm. And then Black Knight shows up and is like, "Hi, Shield Knight, I'm here to help if you need me." And she's like, "Great, could you get Shovel Knight out of here? I'll hold back the Enchantress while the building collapses."
I think it's time I joined your group.
Well, it doesn't join your group. He just gets Shovel Knight out of there while Shield Knight holds the Enchantress back, and the entire tower collapses on top of them.
Oh, right.
And there was much rejoicing after the tower collapses by the townspeople, and Shovel Knight's sad because Shield Knight was still in there. Mm-hmm. But there's a little post-credit scene where it turns out Shield Knight does survive, and she meets up with Shovel Knight, and it's happy.
Yeah.
So that's the main campaign. That's story number 1. And there's some cool stuff in that. Should I individually sum up some of the cool stuff I like about the stories, or should we just say the whole?
We could probably do that.
I think we do one contiguous cool stuff bit.
Yep. Okay. So that moves us on to the second campaign, the first DLC campaign, which it's called Plague of Shadows. It features one of the bosses from the main game named Plague Knight. Actually, all of the Order of No Quarter have that naming scheme convention that Shovel Knight, Black Knight, and Shield Knight have. There's like Plague Knight, there's Spectre Knight, there's King Knight, there's Polar Knight, there's Mole Knight, there's Propeller Knight, there's Tinker Knight. I may be missing one. Treasure
Meta
Knight.
Knight.
Yeah.
Not Meta Knight, unfortunately. not quite. Anyway, so Plague of Shadows is set parallel to the Shovel Knight campaign, where it's all kind of happening in and around the same time, a little before, a little after, here and there. Where Plague Knight has his own secret ambitions from within the Order, because each of the Order unknowingly has like the essence of an ingredient he needs to make the ultimate potion. Plague Knight is like this alchemist who like wears a plague mask and throws bombs and stuff. And so, let's see.
Was he the one with like the scythe?
No, that is Spectre Knight. Plague
Spectre
Knight's the
Knight,
one
yeah.
with the plague bird mask.
Yep. Gotcha.
Anyway. So, after you play the first level and fight Black Knight, because they have all the same bosses and levels in this version, you go to the main town area where Shovel Knight in his game would go to and buy potions and buy items and buy health upgrades and stuff. So you are going into town, and the guard at the front of town is like, "Hey, creep, we don't need your alchemy explosions in town. Please go away, and we won't talk about this altercation." So they kick you out of town, and so they're very mean to you because of how creepy and explosive you
No
are.
lead gold here, alchemist. It's not that kind of alchemy. Makes a transmutation, sir.
Yeah, not quite Full Metal.
No.
Anyway, so he sneaks into his secret base under the town with his little underground magic alchemy friends and his lab assistant, Mona. And she runs a mini game in the main Shovel Knight campaign, but she's like a major character in this side story. And she's the one who's helping you research and create this ultimate potion of ultimate power.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the plot of the game. You go from level to level fighting the bosses and gaining their essences to put in the potion. And throughout the game, there's a lot of little in-between chapter character interactions, kind of taking the place of the Shovel Knight dream sequences. Particularly between a Plague Knight and Mona. There's one where he like walks in on her dancing alone by herself in the corner. And he's like, what was that about? And she's like, sometimes I dance when I'm alone because no one wants to dance with me, okay? So shut up. He's like, yeah, I dance with you, but I'm not good at dancing, so... But you also can go learn a dance from another character. And then there's another little thing where they're like, oh, there's a lever jammed, and so I have to both fix the machine, but their hands end up touching, and it's like someone walks in on them. So basically, a lot of little cute flirtatious moments that are like, yeah, they kind of are into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hinted at that might be why he's looking for the ultimate potion of ultimate power. That might be part of the reason. At a certain point in the story, there's kind of this there's a misunderstanding where Mona is talking to Black Knight and trying to convince him to help them get the Enchantress's essence as like the final ingredient, and he's like, "No, I won't let anyone hurt the Enchantress. That's Shield Knight, my friend. You can't do that." And there's like Black Knight is under the impression that Plague Knight is interested in a different character, a different woman. And so he tells that to Mona, and she gets all mad and huffy with him and leaves. So for the rest of the game, Mona isn't in your laboratory anymore.
Oh.
So you have to talk to another person to get the upgrades she does done.
Feels bad, man.
Feels bad, man. Anyway, let's see. So you do the rest of the bosses. You go to the Tower of Fate, and you fight your way up to the Enchantress, because, again, it's all the same levels as the main Shovel Knight story.
Mm-hmm.
And so Plague Knight gets there, has a little boss fight with the Enchantress, because they got to recycle everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he she lets him have the last ingredient to the potion. So as he's completing it, Mona walks in and is like, "Hey, I'm sorry, and I know why you wanted to make the potion, but you don't have to because I already kind of like you." And he's like, "No, I'm not good enough. You couldn't possibly like me. I need this to be a person that you can love." And she's like, "No, you don't need ultimate power to be someone I can like." And he's like, "Well, too bad the potion's exploding into an actual final boss." So you fight like the potion monster, and it stabilizes. And she's like, "So what are you gonna do now that you have a functional version of the ultimate potion? You gonna use it?" And he's like, "You know what? Yeah, no. Let's just blow up the tower. That sounds more fun.
There you go.
I already have everything I need." And so they blow up the tower, and that's why the tower is crumbling in main Shovel Knight campaign.
Nice.
It's a lot of little tie-ins like that. And so they walk home. The tower collapses. Everyone rejoices, and because of because of the part they played in taking down the enchantress, the alchemists are accepted back into town again. And then there's a little post-credit scene of Plague Knight and Mona dancing to a little chiptune waltz, and it's
Nice.
just like, there you go, little arc. It'll came full circle.
Aw.
So that's the second campaign. The third one is called Spectre of Torment, and it stars Spectre Knight, who is like a ghostly Grim Reaper type of night guy. This is like a prequel to the other two, where it's like about Spectre Knight being kind of an errand boy for the Enchantress and gathering the Order of No Quarter for her.
I see.
So you go all to the same like areas as in the main Shovel Knight game, and you go fight the various bosses in order to like recruit them.
To defeat me by combat. If I'm to join your order.
So the first level, like every other level, ends in Black Knight, where you have to fight the Black Knight, and you fight him, and he's like, "Hey, there's this enchantress. She's got this order. You want to join?" And he's like, "No, I don't want to join an evil order of knights. That doesn't sound like a thing I want to do." And he's like, "Okay, well, goodbye then." And so you go to the other, you fight Plague Knight and all the other guys. And in between a couple levels, they'll do little story segments. In the first little story segment, there's a young adventurer character who's like an optional mini boss in the main Shovel Knight campaign named Rise. He's got these boomerangs. He's like this ninja kid. And he shows up and he's like, "Hey, I heard there's evil stuff here. What's the evil stuff going on?" And the Enchantress is like, "Well, I'm the evil stuff going on," and zaps him with dark magic to possess him and make him a helper. So he's just hanging around at the castle as a helper, evil guy now, Dark Rise. So another thing that happens in between periodically is there's these little playable flashback levels where Spectre Knight will be just on the parapet of the tower, staring into the moonlight broodingly, and it'll like you'll play a little sepia tone like flashback memory of his life before he became Spectre Knight. In these various little flashback segments, there's a ninja knight guy named Donovan and his friend Luan. And they're both like on their way to the Tower of Fate because they heard about the magical amulet. And they're like, "Hey, let's get this magical amulet. It'll make us powerful and we can protect your family." It's this whole thing. We can
The amulet.
So they get up to the tower and they're in the room with the amulet, and then Shield Knight shows up because this is about the time that Shovel Knight and Shield Knight are at the tower exploring and stuff. And she's like, "Hey, guys, this amulet might actually not be all that great. Let's not touch it." And Donovan's like, "No, we need it. This guy has a kid. We need to protect ourselves and stuff. We're like nomadic ninja people." And she's like, "Yeah, that's still not a good idea." And Luan's like, You know what, Donovan? She's probably right. And then Donovan's like, we came so far already. Why not grab it? So anyway, there's a little boss fight against Shield Knight, and it's super cool. But afterwards, you try and get the amulet, and the floor collapses underneath you, and you die. And Luan dies. And it's sad. Well, everybody dies. But then the Enchantress pops out and is like, "Hey, Spectre Knight. No, hey, Donovan, dying guy. You want to be Spectre Knight? You want me to bring you back to life so you can gather up my army so I can take over the world?" And he's like, "Sure.
We're gonna need a bigger team.
I want you to assemble a team." So yeah, that's kind of the origin story of Spectre Knight, where this Donovan guy gets dead in the Tower of Fate because he fought with Shield Knight. So after you fought all of the bosses and recruited all of the knights to the tower, to the order, Black Knight shows up at the tower and is like, "Hey, there's evil stuff going on here. I'm here to check out what kind of evil stuff is going on and maybe stop it because I'm a good guy knight actually." Then the Enchantress shows up and it's like, she goes, "Hey, there's one spot open. You wanna join my order?" And Black Knight's like, "Wait a minute, you're Shield Knight." "No, I don't want to join your evil order, but Shield Knight, you want to come not be evil?" And she's like, "No, I'm the Enchantress." And Spectre Knight's like, "Wait a second, you're Shield Knight? I hate you now because you're the person that got me killed and is the reason I don't have the amulet and stuff." And so as Spectre Knight, you climb up to the tower and you fight the Enchantress and stuff because that's the way the game works. Then after her initial first phase boss fight, she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna take Rise, the kid, and give him an evil final form, and you fight that." And so you fight that. And after you fight that, she's like, "You know what? I'm gonna fire you because I can make Rise be the last guy in my order. I don't need you anymore. So yeah, you can just."
I don't want to play with you anymore.
But then Spectre Knight is like, "No, actually that's not cool because that Rise is my friend Luan's son, and I promised my dead friend that I would protect his kid. And so maybe let him go and I'll be your eighth or robot master guy." And she's like, "Okay, that's a good deal." So you save your best friend's son, but at the cost of his freedom. So he's now enslaved by the Enchantress as Spectre Knight. And that leads us into the events of the other two campaigns.
Gotcha.
So that's Spectre Torment. And there's one final one. There's one final story. This one is called King of Cards. It follows the journey of King Knight, who is a knight guy in armor who fancies himself a king. And
isn't really a king.
Yeah, he's very, very much not a king. But there's this great card game tournament of the card game Joustus, which is made up for this game. And whoever wins that will become
a round of Joustus.
And whoever wins that is going to be crowned the King of Cards. And he's like, "Hey, a king, an opening for a king. I want to be a king. Hey." So after the first level, you go back to your house. But it's not actually your house, it's your mom's house. And she's like, "Oh, hi, honey, did you get the groceries I sent you out for?" And he's like, "Mom, I'm a king. Kings don't get groceries." And she's like, I
just want to play Justice, Mom.
I'm going to go to a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, Mom. And she's like, "Oh, okay, sweetie." It's this rather funny dynamic. So you acquire yourself a deck of Joustus cards, and you go to the tournament hall, and there's a whole bunch of people where you learn to play the mini game. It's because this card game that he's playing is actually this whole mini game in the game. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Now, does this take place? Where is this sort of outside the main
right.
storyline?
The timeline placement this is the first one. in the time. This is like the earliest.
Ah,
This is before
King
people.
Knight origins.
Yeah. This is the origin story of King Knight.
Gotcha.
So he goes and plays a bunch of games at like the local Joustus Hall. Then a couple of guys notice him, and he's like, "Hey, we're very interested in the whole King of Cards Joustus tournament thing. We want to be like our champion. We'll sponsor you. We've got a cool airship. We think you're pretty cool." And he's like, and King Knight goes, "Yeah, I need subjects to rule over. Sure, let's be a team." And so you've got these guys in your little airship, and they carry you around from level to level, and it's this whole thing. And actually, over the course of the game, if you do like little side quests and talk to people, you can like slowly gain more and more followers in your airship, including you can just have your mom up there, and she'll like bake you pies that like permanently upgrade your health. It's very funny. So you go to the first Joustus judge king, right? And it's the king of the castle that you find King Knight in the main Shovel Knight game.
Oh.
And so the King Pridemore is his name. And he's like, "Hi, you here to play cards?" And King Knight's like, "Actually, the rules just said I have to beat you guys. So how about a boss fight?" And so you physically fight the guy.
No.
It's like,
Want to play cards? No, I'll fight you.
but it's like, but they honored the loophole. It's like, yeah, I guess we didn't see that coming, but it works. So King Pridemore joins your ship, and he starts giving you kingly advice, which you don't pay attention to at all. King Knight's just like, no.
Naturally.
So you fight more guys, you do more card games, you do more levels and stuff, until you get to the final King of Cards judge guy, who turns out he's just kind of a regular monster being puppeted by the Enchantress.
As
Like, and this was all a clever ruse to get the royalty out of the picture and help me take over the country. and everyone's like, "Hey, that's not cool." And
Hey,
so you
uncool.
fight your way up the tower, and you fight the final boss she makes, and she's like, "Hey, King Knight, that's pretty cool stuff you're doing. You know what? I could give you a castle, and like you could be an actual king, not just of a stupid card game, but like in actual life."
like for realsies.
And then all your allies you've acquired over the course of the game are like, "No, he would never join you. He would
no."
never do that, right?
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 Right.
Right?" And King Knight's like, "Actually, though,
Right.
this sounds like a really cool idea." So he straight up abandons his crew and joins the Enchantress because she can promise him the glory of being a king.
We have a working ice cream machine. Oh my gosh, sign my up.
Sign me up. That's the end of King of Cards, basically. But there is like one optional side thing where if you play all of the card mini games and win, you can talk to a character named Cardia, and she's like, "Hi, I'm from another planet, and I've been looking for the fabled King of Cards to be the hero of my planet. And you're worthy. You wanna come be the hero?" And King Knight's like, do I get to rule your planet?" And she's like, "What? No? Why would you think that?" And he's like, "Well, then no deal." And she's like, she gets mad and becomes a super hard final hidden boss.
I see.
So basically, King Knight is this. He's quite obviously a
Self-styled ruler.
right. He's charming and can like get people to join him, and like he's got this like, but he's also like hollow. It's all empty show, right? So that's the overview on the 4 stories.
Mm-hmm. And they all tie into the main story at the end.
Right. And I suppose that's one of the cool things about it. Like, there's the main Shovel Knight story, right? But all of these side stories end up giving, like, little context and backstory to, like, every single NPC.
Mm-hmm.
And even even several of like the moves the bosses will do, like the attacks they'll do, are weapons and tools you can acquire in their individual campaigns.
Ah.
So, for instance, like King Knight in his fight with Shovel Knight has this move where he like summons a bunch of trumpets from the side of the screen to like throw confetti at him, and like the confetti will damage Shovel Knight. But like in King of Cards, the confetti cannon move is like a thing you can do. It's like a screen nuke.
Ah.
So, and there's like a whole bunch of little tie-in and context things like that. One of the other really cool things I like about this is each of the games, to different degrees, of course, utilize like storytelling through the gameplay, and that's something I rather like. There's obviously a lot of cutscenes and dialogue, but in moments like the Shovel Knight dream sequences, where you've got Shield Knight falling from the sky, right, and the way that kind of struggle reflects his inner like emotional struggle with the whole thing, and then the way it's paid off at the very end when you've got Shield Knight physically falling from the top of the tower and you catch her, and it's just
You go all deja vu, like actually save her.
Right. Not so much deja vu, but it's like the
Fire on the street.
What?
Never mind.
Oh,
I
I wasn't in that place.
yeah.
But anyway, it's like the culmination of like all the little things that happened up to that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just yeah, I think that's a cool thing about it. There's also just a whole lot of character to the game.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot more just stuff in the game that I haven't covered because it's not relevant to either of the stories.
Right.
But there's just every little character has like they're just fun. They're just fun designs. There's like the Troupple King, who's like a giant trout but also an apple, and he shows up as like a guy who will give you like health potions and stuff. But he's also a boss in King of Cards because he's one of the kings.
So it seems like for games like this, there's like this design philosophy where aspects of the character's personality come out in their design.
Absolutely.
It's kind of similar, I suppose. So like a lot of like in My Hero Academia, for example, that whole deal, they have the characters, and we'll do an episode on it eventually, but
Probably after season 5.
the characters, they have superpowers based, and then that ties into their personality.
Right.
So yeah, these characters have outward expressions of their inward realities, I suppose.
And even for the 4 main characters, their personalities are expressed through their gameplay. Where Shovel Knight is this very stalwart, sturdy, straightforward guy. He's the hero type, right?
Is it ever explained why his shovel is his weapon of choice? Or is that
It's
just
a good bludgeoning instrument.
It's the reason he has a shovel is because the developers wanted a weapon that could let him flip enemies over and then stab them and then like unlock
That's one way to do
dig
it.
through the ground, and like they want so
It's a multi-purpose tool.
right, his weapon is very gameplay focused, but it's also just kind of goofy. It's part of that kind of goofy character of the game where it's like, yeah, he's the knight that has a shovel.
And isn't there one boss who like is like in the snow or whatever, and he has like a giant scoop shovel?
Yep.
That he fights
Polar
with?
Knight has a giant
Polar
snow
Knight.
shovel.
Yep.
And so him and Black Knight and Shovel Knight all kind of follow the code of chivalry. It's so good. But yeah. But then like back to the personalities through gameplay sort of thing. You've got Plague Knight, who's very kind of like he's a mad scientist, right? His gameplay is very chaotic. You throw bombs everywhere.
You can
He's
fly
got a
around.
double jump. You fly around and explosions, and there's a lot of
Potions
experimenting and mixing and matching with like the various weapons you have. So like his creativity, but also just kind of unhinged manicness comes through when you're playing. Or like Spectre Knight is this like ninja-esque, very very cool, but very like edgy and like
I have a dark past.
yeah, the brooding dark past kind of guy. So there's like sections of the game where you can like grind on rails on your scythe like it's a skateboard, and there's like
So if you're a specter, that won't cut your feet open.
well, it's on the stick of the scythe.
Oh, okay, yeah, that too. That works too.
Then of course there's King Knight, who's this big pompous brash guy. He like he like his thing is you can dash forward and bash your shoulder into things and it'll just break. But then you like jump up and do a pirouette spin. So you like spin on top of guys and then you'll bash and you'll spin, and it's like he's brash but elegant and arrogant, and it's his whole. So you kind of get a feel for what these characters are like by playing them. And there's actually even a multiplayer versus mode now.
Oh yeah.
Where you can play as all the bosses, and they all kind of have that feel of, you can kind of get a feel for Propeller Knight's high flying carefreeness, or Mole Knight's just kind of workaholic ethic through gameplay. So they use the game to like enhance the characters, and it's kind of cool that
I use the game to enhance the game.
right. So that's something I think is cool.
That just sounds like game with extra steps. Anyway,
That just sounds like game.
It just sounds like
that just sounds.
That.
the. Have we ever done a sentence reduction on this show?
Well, we just did.
I'm sure we have.
We must
have
at
to
some
have.
point.
But now we definitely have.
We have to.
We have.
We. Moving on. I guess any other cool things you'd like to talk about with the game?
Let's
It's only game.
check my notes.
We have to
Why
admit.
you have to be made?
That was
The
that was a
gist-
lot of it.
The gist of it.
I think each of the games have fairly simple, straightforward stories. In fact, kind of typical of video games of their kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shovel Knight's main campaign has this very save the princess
Kind of
structure to it,
Mm-hmm.
but with a little more emotional depth, a little more thought, a little extra twist to it.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a more of a Mega Man influence than a
Right,
Zelda
very-
influence.
Well, it actually has a whole lot of NES game influences, like Mega Man and a little bit of Zelda 2, a little bit of Castlevania, a little bit of Mario 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it very,
Just an amalgam.
and it's also got this. Well, I can talk about the aesthetic, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Cool beans.
Cool beans.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it looked pretty cool from what I saw of Nathan playing it. I haven't played it.
But
I just realized we forgot to introduce it as a gregarious game. Oh no.
oh no, you'll have to edit that in there.
Let's retroactively.
It'll just have to
introduce
be
it.
out of context.
Yeah, let's retroactively.
We're
Well,
already,
you know what? Yeah. Well, let's
You'll just jam it in there, and it'll be
it'll
it'll be okay.
and
It'll make
everyone
sense
listening
when
to
we
this
talk-
will be like, yeah, we listened to it already. Get on with it. Get on with it.
Get on with it.
we're not used to the bumpers, guys.
No, we're still learning bit by bit. Well, are we ready for some transcendental analysis?
I think maybe.
I think so.
All right. So, truth. What sort of truth can we bring out of this game?
Well, each of the stories kind of has. Well, they're all pretty straightforward and simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But each of them has a little bit of their own like truth nugget to them,
Sure.
right? So in the main Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope as it's called, you've got this dynamic between Black Knight and Shovel Knight and Shield Knight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where both of them are trying to keep Shield Knight safe, trying to save Shield Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Black Knight doesn't realize that there's hope in dragging her out of the darkness she's trapped in.
Mm-hmm.
But Shovel Knight reaches in and like actively pulls her out, and it does nearly destroy Shield Knight, the whole Enchantress situation. But Shovel Knight never gave up hope.
Mm-hmm.
There are no hopeless cases.
He had some sad boy hours for a while on his farm, but then he realized, wait,
Right. He.
She's not dead. She's feeling better.
I'm not
Probably go for a walk.
That's another Monty Python reference right
There
there.
we go. All sorts of them.
So yeah, there's
We didn't even plan this.
there's kind of a there's no one beyond saving kind of message to it.
And even
Bless you.
I suppose the competition betwixt Black Knight and Shovel Knight is really sort of a misunderstanding more than anything.
So that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
Then we got Plague of Shadows, which is very the entire story hinges around the relationship between Mona and Plague Knight, where he feels inadequate to pursue her, and so he
I made
tries
the most
to
powerful potion in the world. Maybe she'd love me.
right. So he's pursuing these extreme measures to prove himself worthy, and she's like, no,
Love is a gift.
it you don't have exactly, and she was already willing to give herself to him, but he wasn't. He
was
didn't love
trying to
himself
earn it.
first.
Yeah.
He didn't. He needed to be comfortable with himself before he could give himself to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so by literally fighting a giant mutated version of him as a reflection through because of the potion, because final boss, he overcame that.
And dies to himself in a way.
Well, he also kills himself in a way. But yeah, no,
Not the same thing, but
not the same thing. But yeah, so that's kind of the main central element to Plague of Shadows, and it's really, really nice. Spectre of Torment has this moment of self-sacrifice.
it's a bit of a tragedy.
Actually, the 4 games, they kind of cover all the bases. You've got Shovel Knight, that's this very hero's journey kind of story.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Plague of Shadows, that's this whole romance.
Mm-hmm.
Plague of Shadows is this tragedy, and then
Or Spectre
King of
Torment.
Cards,
Spectre of Torment.
Spectre of Torment. I'm sorry,
Yep.
is this tragedy, and then King of Cards is kind of this comedy with a dark punchline.
Mm-hmm. Seeking after power and being corrupted by it.
So yeah, you've got
Thanks, cards.
thanks cards. So no, but like back to Spectre Knight's story, he's got the moment of self-sacrifice at the end where he's
Atoning for
his past misdeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Where he kind of had to own up to the fact that all of this was brought on by him.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of had to face up to the truth that the Enchantress was kind of his creation, and now he's kind of a slave to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then King of Cards, you've got this charming and charismatic leader who doesn't care about anybody but himself.
His selfishness drives away the community he builds
Right.
of people who love him.
Even right at the very end, his mom has this moment of, what did I create?
Oh, goodness.
Because, at the beginning, she was very much going along with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually implied that she made the king armor costume for him. So he's very much this kind of nobody loser that sees himself as something greater, and which is not in itself bad, but he goes to an extreme to get there.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even care when he's called to actual greatness.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, do I get to be a king? And well, if I don't,
do I get something for doing a good thing?
Right. If I don't get, why would you offer that?
Yeah.
So he's kind of this just dark, tragic character, but also funny because there's this whole attitude to the game. It's so silly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the truth section. Not very deep, not a whole lot, but like
There's little nuggets.
the little nuggets.
Goodness. What sort of goodness is in this game?
What sort of goodness is in this game, indeed? Well, in Shovel Knight, you've got this, fairly standard heroism kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end, you've got this sacrifice of Shield Knight to save her friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually get this, but before that, in the final boss fight with the Enchantress Ghost thingy, there's this great like companionship with Shovel Knight and Shield Knight that has only really been alluded to and talked about up to now, but you get to experience it through gameplay how well they work as a unit. Because she's got this whole thing where she lifts her shield up and you can jump on top of it and then whack the boss on the head where the weak point is. So there's this kind of
complementarity to Shield Knight and Shovel Knight.
Right, there's this expression of their compatibility, of their like friendship with each other through gameplay. It's not a lot. It's not terribly deep, but you kind of feel it deeper because you are playing the game. Right? Then and Black Knight, he's as a character, he tries to do good, but he kind of does it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right? His one goal is to keep Shield Knight safe. He just so he's got this I don't know, faith to him, or like faithfulness to him.
Yeah.
Even though it may be slightly misplaced.
But he doesn't want to allow the purgation of this evil that is haunting Shield Knight.
Right.
So he's unwilling to deal with what she's become in order to actually save her.
Right. He can't quite face the potential consequences of actually challenging the Enchantress. Then some goodness in Plague Knight, and actually all of them. There's like some side characters you can interact with, and in Plague Knight, you can actually. There's this one mini boss character who tried to sign up for the Order of No Quarter, but is also just kind of a loser, so nobody will keep him around. But then Plague Knight gives him a job as like a lab assistant in his little underground secret laboratory, and he becomes like helpful. And Plague Knight's not necessarily the nicest guy, but he, over the course of the story, starts to be nicer to people, particularly expressed through his relationship with Mona. So that's good stuff.
Beauty. What is beautiful about this game?
The aesthetics of the game are very inspired by the NES. They're not like exactly what you could find on the NES. They're not like
a little more high res because modern game, but still
so there's a
pixel
lot
art.
more effects and a lot more colors, and so, but it's still very pixel art,
and
it's very retro inspired pixel art,
sort of 8-bit music type stuff going on.
Right, but it's actually not it's a pretty good looking game. There's actually some areas where the use of color and the backgrounds are like, oh, that's a pretty sky, or that's a it's got a simple but like nice aesthetic to it. But I think my favorite element of beauty has got to be the soundtrack. It's composed by a composer. It's composed by a guy named Jake Kaufman, and with help on a couple of tracks from a woman named Manabe Matsume, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that right. And she's notable for having worked on the first Mega Man game.
I see.
So the soundtrack, I dig it. It's very upbeat, very chiptune, very in the vibe of Castlevania or Mega Man, right?
And the game is sort of kind of lighthearted, peppy adventure. Sort of
absolutely.
Spring in its step adventure.
It fits that perfectly. But like also every level theme very complements the levels themselves. There's like this the level Tinker Knight lives in is like this clock tower with like all the gears and stuff. And so his theme incorporates a whole bunch of like percussion sounds that sound like metallic clanking. And it's got a very almost clockwork rhythm to it. Then like of course you've got the very Castlevania feeling Lich Yard Spectre Knight theme, the very like bright and gold pompous King Knight level theme, the chaotic explosive
Plague Knight
level theme, and it's all just really good stuff. But no, Jake Kaufman is one of my favorite video game composers. He also works on a lot of the Shantae games, if you've heard of them, or the remake of DuckTales. He did the remixes of the classic Moon theme. He did it justice, I would say.
There you go.
So yeah, he's pretty good stuff in general. Then like all the songs get a darker remix for Spectre of Torment. When you get like the prequel versions of the levels, you get to kind of, they all have this different character to them. So
more
good,
spooky.
very good stuff. So I think that's good stuff.
So what is unitive in Shovel Knight?
Well, individually, the games are very gameplay first,
Right.
and so like everything is designed around the individual characters' core designs.
Mm-hmm.
And so the storytelling and the kinds of stories they tell and the design of everything is very united around that.
Mm-hmm.
But even between the four, they all share the same world, right? There's a lot of the incidental little bad guys that are shared between them, but they're all like utilized differently by the same guys.
Right.
There's a lot of like little things get explained by the prequels or like side stories. So even like when you play as Plague Knight through the Plague Knight level, the final boss of the Plague Knight level as Plague Knight is Shovel Knight. You like meet Shovel Knight at the same time he meets you. And so it's like you both fight the same boss fight. In Plague Knight's version, you have to beat him, but then he gets up immediately after and then whacks you, so it's all canon.
He has another life.
Or actually, there are no lives in this game.
Oh.
It takes a more Dark Soulsian approach to
I
if you
see.
die, you drop money, so grab the money next time you come.
Gotcha.
So it's basically infinite lives, but limited gold.
Gotcha.
It's a good system. It's like, but I think the whole game is very unified in its expression of being a love letter to those old NES games
Mm-hmm.
in terms of its storytelling and its aesthetic and its music and its. This is probably one of the least deep games we've covered on this show, but
that being said, the experience is where the depth comes in.
oh, absolutely. And it's relatively inexpensive. You get 4 games for the price of one. I heavily recommend it.
And it's an indie game, right?
It is an indie game.
There you go.
And it was like their first
And
indie game.
if you
Stick
like
Games Studio.
if you like indie game platformers, probably the one for you.
At some point, I might even be able to convince you to play it.
At some point, I'll probably, well, since it's not a live system, I probably won't do it with as much wailing and grinding of teeth as Mario. But
I mean, you'll still lose a lot of money.
yeah. Any thoughts from the Riley side of the pod?
Sorry,
Audible
you were-
thumbs up.
Yeah, a lot of what I had thought of saying has kind of been addressed already. It seems like it's just a fun little time.
It's a fun
You
little
know?
time.
But what you see is what you get
it-
with it.
Right.
It
It's
doesn't
not-
market itself
maybe
as
not a
this
must-play,
super
but
meta
experience.
thing. But at the same time, it's like, it's just very honest about what it is
Yeah.
and what you're gonna get from it,
Yeah.
which is appreciable.
And what you're going to get from it is a fun game with a pretty decent story attached to it.
Honest and upfront and not terribly ambitious, but does what
Ambitious,
it does well.
that could be debated.
Well,
There
okay.
it's 4 campaigns from a studio over the course of 5 years
Right.
on Kickstarter money.
But I mean, as far as like once you get down to the game, what the game is trying to sell you
Right.
versus what it delivers it matches up pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Because some games overpromise and underdeliver.
And some games look unassuming but have like this ridiculous depth to them.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, our podcast is kind of unassuming, and maybe not all that deep. Who knows? We're working.
We,
on
we
it.
try
But-
we try to be deep. We have some deep episodes.
Yeah, we do.
We have a deep backlog. Where can they find the backlog?
Well, first of all, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papist. That's us. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Palapapists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. So yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll be back at it again next week.
We Riley will be back on.
With the white
Riley
vans.
Okay. Discord
There
is
goes
gone.
Discord.
Well, I guess.
I
Bye.
can still hear you.
I guess that's a bye for me.
Yeah.
Hope Riley say bye. Oh, he can't hear us.
You can't hear us. He's wearing AirPods.
Well,
Hold on.
I certainly can.
Okay.
get back into the voice call.
I don't know what happened there. The Discord
no,
crashed.
you guys have. No, you can.
Okay.
Go
Well,
back.
we were just gonna say goodbye. That was weird.
Bye.
That wasn't the stop recording.